For this task, you will need a pencil. You can see I have two. I'm using a 3B and a 5H. The B pencil will be for my bolder black lines, and the H for my thinner lines. You'll also need a ruler, although we don't need to measure anything, so anything with a straight edge will do for this task, but a ruler will make it a bit easier. You'll also need some paper. I'm using plain A4 paper. Any paper will do, but I recommend plain A4 paper for this task. So here we go. We take our ruler and we're going to draw a straight line across the middle of the page. This will become our horizon line. Now if you look out anywhere in the world, you will see where the sky meets the land, and that's the horizon. And then we'll add a vanishing point. And this is the point at which things become so far away we can't see them anymore. So we're going to start by drawing a railway line, and we can take two lines in a triangle shape from our vanishing point coming down, and then we'll turn this into a railway track by adding some sleepers or lines going across those triangle lines that we've just produced. So you can see now I'm making my way up the page. I'm drawing across my ruler and taking my time to keep my ruler straight and parallel with my horizon line. And these lines get slowly and steadily a little bit closer together each time, so that as this railway track becomes further and further away, the sleepers become smaller and smaller, and we can capture that in our drawing by making the lines just slightly closer together each time when we draw them. Now I do recommend that you pause this video every now and again, so watch a bit, pause the video, have a go yourself. And you can rewind anything that I say to hear it again if you need to. So here I'm adding the railway runners to the sleepers and giving them some width so that they're not just a single line. And then I'm going to switch pencils to my B pencil and go over those lines. Now this is something I'd like you to see from my drawing. I'm using my thinner, lighter lines to plan what I'm doing. And then once I'm happy with that plan and it looks good on the page, I'm going to go over it with a darker line. In this case, using a B pencil, you can just use one pencil and press a little bit harder at this time to really put those lines on the page, make them bold, make them stand out. And we can do the same with our sleepers now. Our sleepers can sit underneath the railway lines so that we have the depth to our drawing that we would like. And we use those lines we drew earlier as our guides. We'll go over them. Making sure to always have our lines going to the vanishing point or straight across the page. So for this part of the sleeper, we're going to go straight across the page and the edges go to the vanishing point. We can then add some depth to each of our sleepers by coming straight down the page and then across the bottom as well. I'm going to show you a couple of these. You can watch along, see how that goes. And then I'll fast forward to the end of my railway line, and of course you can pause this video and have a go yourself and come back when you are ready. So once more, lines go straight across the page, using my ruler, using my pencil, keeping it parallel with the horizon line, and then using the vanishing point and my line on the end of each sleeper, making sure that I am accurate with the vanishing point there. And then the bottom edge of the sleeper we can draw straight down and straight across to give each sleeper just a little bit of depth. So one more example for you. Straight across the page, straight across the page. From the vanishing point, coming down along the sides of my sleepers. And then straight down the page and straight across the bottom to give my sleeper that depth. So pause the video now and have a go at that part for yourself. Come back and play when you've done that section. Okay, welcome back. I hope that went well for you. Next up, we're going to have a go at drawing a road to the left side of our railway. So taking our ruler through the vanishing point, using my pencil to keep me accurate, and drawing two light lines coming away from there. So that will turn into a road later on to the left side of our railway. Now, if you'd like to try this as well, you can add a fence, and we're going to add a fence to the right side of our railway line. And again, 2 lines coming from the vanishing point, using my ruler, being as accurate as I can to take those lines along the right side of my railway. So we'll have a look at the fence now. We're going to add some vertical lines in to make the fence posts. This will be the supports to hold the fence up. And adding those, getting slowly closer together as we approach the vanishing point, further away from each other as we're closer to the bottom of our page. And now we know where those posts are going to go. We can make them bold, we can make them stand out on our drawing, being careful to go from the top to the bottom on each of those posts. And we also know where the bottom and top edge of our fence will be, so we can put those lines in bold as well. So next up, we can add some light construction lines for our road. We're going to take a road junction off to the left, and notice that these lines go straight across the page, being parallel with the horizon line. I recommend you pause the video here, have a look at what you've done and see how you're getting on. At this time, you might wish to start again and take some time to have a go at part of this drawing once more. Or you can continue and we'll have a look at adding some more detail to the parts that we have added so far. So for the next part of this video, I think this is slightly more difficult, and we'll have a look at some ways of making our drawing look more natural. So we're going to take our bottom edge of our fence now, and instead of using a straight edge with our ruler, we're going to make it look more like it's got grass growing along the bottom. So still following the same construction line, still following that same line to the vanishing point, we're going to add some grass along that edge, using a wiggly line, a little bit spiky, and also putting some tufts of grass in, flicking up from that line to have some grass and some texture on the bottom to break up some of the more straight and solid edges that are on our drawing, and make it look more organic. We can also take this time to add some detail to our fence, and you'll notice that I'm using very light lines for this instead of being dark and bold. Now this is a good technique to use because it means you can have more lines on your drawing without overpowering your drawing or your drawing becoming too dark. So by putting these lines on and keeping them faint, and then the same with the vertical lines for our fence, you can follow the correct techniques, lines to the vanishing point or vertical lines. And you can add that extra detail to your drawing without it becoming confusing, overpowered or too dark. So next we'll add some bold lines to our fence, just to make our fence have some more depth to each of its parts, to give it some more strength and to make it feel more structured and solid on our page. So I'm taking my vertical posts and being deliberately just off to one side to make each of those lines slightly wider, slightly thicker, to make it look like the fence has more strength. And you can see the same across the top edge of the fence as well. So next up, we can add some detail to our road on that side of our drawing. And again, I'd like to make our road feel less like straight lines for this part of the drawing. I think it would be quite rustic out in the wilderness somewhere, this road. So I'm going to use some slightly wiggly lines from my edges without using a ruler for this, but of course following those construction lines that we put in earlier to make sure that our road follows the 1-point perspective rules and keeps it looking correct on our page. So next part for our task, we're going to add a house on this corner. This is a basic house structure that we're going to add. And if you want to have a go at this, which is slightly more difficult, start off by drawing a very basic house drawing, a square or rectangle at the bottom with a triangle on top, and then take each of those corners that you can see on the right hand side back to the vanishing point. And keep these lines really faint at this time. We can then mirror the back edge of our house with a vertical line and the diagonal roof line, keeping your roof parallel with the previous edge of your roof. As before, folks, I would encourage you to stop at the point which you find most suitable for you. Next up, we're going to add some details to the house which are slightly more difficult once more. And do feel free to have a look at this part of the video and perhaps just have a go if you're finding this okay and you're getting on all right to this point. Please don't feel the need to have to do this, especially if you're finding this more difficult. So here we go with adding some detail to the house. We'll start with a line that marks the top of the door, and this is also the top of the window for that part of the house. Have a look outside if you haven't realised this before. On houses, windows and doors have their tops at the same position. And we can use that same line to mark the other side of our house to see where the tops and bottoms of the windows would be on that other side. So the side facing us on our house can have its windows with the top and bottom in the correct position, making them the same height as the window on the right-hand side of our house that we can see with our door there. So adding light lines at this time, having a look at what I'm doing, seeing if I like the position that I've drawn things in before committing to going over them with a bold pencil. And then of course when you are happy with that shape and taking your time using your ruler and your pencil to put those lines into bold. Now, of course, on this end of our house, there's a line which we don't need to draw, which is that one straight across the house. But the outline we do need to draw. So the outline of the roof with its parallel lines for the slope of the roof, and then that triangle on top, but of course not completing that triangle on its bottom edge. So once more, I'll speed up this part of the video for you. Have a watch, have a go yourself, see how you get on with this. Feel free to change some of the details and make the house your own, but this is some details being added to the house, which you can have a go at yourself if you're getting on okay with this task. So hopefully your house is now looking something like this and you've been pausing your video along the way to give yourself time to have a go. For the next part of my house, I'm going to add a fence surrounding the house. The fence is going to start from the vanishing point and go behind the house and then have a vertical post at its corner. And I'm going to bring that fence across the front edge of the house to the corner where the road takes that bend and make sure that my fence is always following the point perspective rules of heading towards the vanishing point. The front edge of the fence, of course, can be horizontal on the page with vertical lines for the posts, but that back edge, where it heads towards the vanishing point, needs to remain following those rules. So for this part, you can see that I'm adding fence posts following the bottom and top edge guidelines. I'm drawing a straight line coming straight up the page, a vertical line, and then allowing my pencil to swoop across into a curve at the top of that post, keeping my ruler in place to come back down on the other side. And now for some fence supports across the top and middle of each fence post. So I'm using my bold line straight away here. I'm going between each fence post, adding a line straight across the page. I'm going to do this around the top edges of the posts and also in the middle of each post to make it have a fence-like structure. Notice that I'm keeping all of these lines fairly close together. There is some detail behind there that I'm trying to hide, and I'm going to make sure that I put some extra lines on this fence towards the end of this drawing, just to hide the detail that is now underneath the fence and should not be seen through the fence. And now adding some detail to that part of the fence just to soften each of the edges and make it feel more part of the drawing, to make it feel like it fits in the scene. And using the wood grain texture, or at least some faint lines on the wood to make it feel more like it has some texture on there. And also doing this to hide some of the things that are now behind the fence that you can see through the fence, which I don't want people to see. So some light detail lines added to the fence as well. So next up, we are going to take one slightly more difficult task. We're going to have a look at some shapes which don't have many straight lines in them. We're going to add some trees to the right-hand side of our drawing. I'd like to do this to add some balance to the whole overall picture and to show you some more organic shapes as well. So to do this, we need to plan where the bottom of our line of trees will be. This construction line can remain quite light, and all of the bottoms of our trees will be there on that line. And then we can plan where the tops of our trees will be as well. And I'd like these trees to be quite tall. So I'm going to have this construction line and put some vertical lines in to represent the tree trunks. So this part of the tree, you wouldn't really see this. This is sort of the middle or center line of a tree. And you can see that each tree is slightly further away from the previous tree than the one before it. So the spaces get bigger as they come towards the front edge of the drawing. So on each of these lines that we've just added, we can turn them into a tree. Now, a tree being quite natural, quite rough, we're going to have a very loose way of following this line and put it into a shape that's quite jagged. So you'll see that I'm adding my first outlines of tree shapes here. I'm keeping them quite light to make sure that I'm happy with the drawing and the way that it looks. And being quite spiky in an upwards direction. So these are sort of some thin, tall, upright trees. And I wanted to do this to show you how you can make things like this look in this sort of drawing. Now, of course, you could add something like lampposts across this side here. You could add some electricity pylons or something like that. I chose to do trees to sort of extend the challenge to you folks of having something that is more challenging to do without those straight ruler lines to be used. So I've got the structure for each of my trees now, and I think they look quite good. So I'm going to go over these with a bolder outline edge. And I'm going to keep doing this to make each of these trees feel quite rough and quite natural. The outline of a tree is definitely not a solid line edge. So I'm going to go over these a few times on each tree to make sure that I get plenty of lines and depth in there. Not too dark, of course, so that it doesn't overpower the rest of the drawing. So now also adding depth to each tree, using my lines to go inside those trees, noticing that the outline still remains the darkest part, with the insides taking some slightly lighter lines. And of course not a single line around the outside of each tree. I want each tree to have several outlines so that it feels more 3D, has more depth and is less flat on the page. So to complete our trees, we can also add a trunk in the bottom part here. Remember, this is behind the fence, so don't be too dark with this part. Let it be slightly fainter than the fence. And then we can be quite rough on the bottom edge to suggest some grass across the bottom of each of those tree trunks. And that completes the line of trees for our drawing. So I'd really like you to have a go at some of these tasks to see how you get on. But of course, do so without worrying if you get it wrong. There's no need to panic if something doesn't go quite right. And of course, if your drawing doesn't look like this, then please don't judge yourself on that. Just have a go and see how you get on. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed learning along with me today. I hope you've had a good go at this yourself. And again, if you didn't draw the whole drawing and chose to do just some parts of it, that's absolutely brilliant. And thank you very much for your time today. I wish you well and have a safe and enjoyable day.